So my name's Smith Alley. I'm 18 years old now. See, the problem with this, use the bio that I had last year, is that I was 17. So we had to add a year there. I want to tell you a little bit about me. You see, I am incredible. Thank you, Pamela. I went to MIT when I was 16, graduated top of class in 2 years. Just got an exuberant amounts of knowledge, and one other thing that you should know about me is that I'm lying. So I'll put my real qualifications up here. The first thing that you should know about me is those are just bullet points. They were probably in white. So the first thing that you should know about me is that I have 18 full years of life under my belt. I have survived. The second thing that you should know about me is that I have jumped out of an airplane. And the third thing, my greatest qualification, is last semester I got a 58.625% on my math final. However, I still graduated the class. I was raised on Team Estrogen, so I have 3 sisters. There was one summer where I had my aunt and my uncle and their kids come and stay for the summer. They were escaping the Texas heat. They have 5 girls, and I came so close to ordering shirts, Team Estrogen. I still might do it, so let me know if you want one. I love my family. I love my siblings. They are my why. I want to start by talking about paper cuts, but I think that it's important first to ask the question, who in here has had a broken bone or stitches? Some, but not all. I remember the first time I ever got stitches, I was at my cousin's house, and he put a sled in between the coffee table and the couch, and he told me if I ran fast enough that it would act as a bridge. And so I got ready, and I took that first step onto the sled. It came out from underneath me, and I just whacked my lip on the coffee table, had to go get 6 stitches. Some of us have had those experiences, but we've all had that paper cut, right? So I want to tell you about the very first time that I got my very first paper cut. And it starts right here, the first day of first grade. Let me tell you, I was ready for first grade. I was feeling so good. I was always a pretty smart kid. I got along with people very well. And there was this girl. Yes, there was this girl in kindergarten. Her name was Lauren, and I really liked Lauren. And Lauren liked me. And in kindergarten, we had gone to the Hogle Zoo. Her mom had taken us. And in the back seat of her mom's minivan, she kissed me on the cheek. And so I was just ready. Like, I was going to get good grades. I was going to have a ton of friends. I was going to see where things would go with Lauren. I was so excited. And I walk into class, and I sit down at the yellow table with my friend Jackson, who I'd grown up with. And I'm talking with Jackson. And Miss Rooney comes in, starts class. She goes, all right, everyone, we're going to stand up one by one and introduce ourselves. And so kids start standing up, and they sit down. It comes to be my turn. I get up, and I get really nervous looking at all these people, and my legs start to shake a little bit. And I had a stutter. My mom thought it was cute, but I beg to differ. And so I go, my name's Smith. And I'm like, dang it, this was my one chance to impress all of these people. Now I'm going to get bad grades, have no friends, and I'm never going to get that kiss on the cheek ever again. It was over. I was embarrassed, angry, and flustered. And so I sit down, and so vividly I remember this girl from the red table. She turned around, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "Why can't you talk right?" And this was the very first day that I got my very first paper cut. Now, as you can tell, I'm not talking about the paper cuts that we get on our hands, but the paper cuts that we get on our hearts. And the problem with today is that we aren't taught how to put a bandage on those. We aren't taught how to heal from those paper cuts. They open, they get worse and worse, and they continue to bleed. So this day, I bought into the core belief that I wasn't enough, that I was never going to be enough to have friends who truly cared about me or parents who were proud of me. And I bought into that. Life kept going. When I was 9 years old, my parents had given me this tablet for Christmas. It was the coolest thing ever, lime green back. And I remember being on the internet one day when I clicked on a link that wasn't what I thought it was, and I saw porn for the very first time. Now, you should know that my parents were like the woke parents. We talked about this stuff. The first Monday of every single month, we had our porn talk night. And it was so consistent. My mom would be like, "Hey, kids, it's time to have a talk." "Mom, the porn talk again? We had this like literally a few weeks ago. Do we have to?" And so we had the conversations. My parents had the restrictions and the filters. And I knew exactly what to do when I saw porn. And so I think back to their words, "Turn it off and tell an adult." Turn it off and tell an adult. And so I do that first part. I turn it off and I set it down. And I think about the second, tell an adult. Immediately, my mind goes back to this kid who didn't think that he was enough, who didn't think that he'd ever be enough to make his parents proud, and I was ashamed. I was scared that even though it wasn't my fault what I had seen, that my parents would think less of me. They'd be disappointed or ashamed in me. So life went on. Nothing really came of this until 9 months to a year later when porn crept back into my life as a drug. It was a small fix to everything that I was feeling and dealing with. At the same time, I got social media, which made my porn consumption worse. And I'd see the highlights of everybody's life, them going on vacation or hanging out with friends when I wasn't invited, and I hated that. There were these guys with like washboard abs, and they were posing on the beach like this. And as you can tell here and here, that's not me. I'm Team Dad Bod. And so I began to hate the situation that I'm in. I start to hate my body. And with that cycle of addiction, I continue to feel the pain, try and numb out. But when I come back, it's just worse. It gets worse and worse and worse. By the time I'm 11, I'm using pornography 5 to 7 times a day. Social media, video games, whatever I could do to numb out, to escape this reality. This got worse and worse until I was sitting in my 8th grade shop class, and I decided that I was going to take my life. I didn't think that anybody cared if I woke up the next morning. I thought that I was so evil, the secret was so evil, that if anyone knew the real Smith, that they couldn't love me. And so I make this plan to take my life. But it was all revolving around the fact that I didn't want my parents to find me. They had done so much. They were such good people. I didn't want them to have to deal with that. And so I was waiting. I was waiting for them to go out on a weekend retreat, on a getaway. I remember so vividly that Sunday, they came to me and they said, "Hey kids, next week, by the way, we're going out of town. We have a babysitter for you." And I remember that relief, thinking it's all over, that I just had to get through the week. And that Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, it just passed slowly. I was just looking forward to the time when I'd be able to quit. But of course, there must have been a greater plan for me, because on Wednesday, while I was scrolling my social media, I found an organization called Fight the New Drug. You might have heard of it. And I went down this rabbit hole of information and research, and I found out that I wasn't a bad kid, but I was a good kid wrapped up in bad content. For the first time, I realized that there was hope for me. And then, call it coincidence if you will, the next day, a man named Rob Eastman came into my 8th grade health class and talked to us about his experience with substance abuse and suicide. And I felt like I wasn't alone. Now, my consumption didn't stop there, but I finally had a hope for my life. I knew that my life was worth living. But I'd gotten so good at putting up these masks, I could hide from everybody. I could be whoever you wanted me to be. I could go to school, and for the first period, I could hang out with the basketball kids. Second period, I could go hang out with the nerds, and then third period, I'd be with the stoners. I could do it all because I didn't know who I was. I got to this point on April 23rd, 2018. I had my first and we're praying for last encounter with the police. They showed up at my parents' door, and to give you some context, my mom grew up 1 out of 10, and my dad was in the Army, and so they ran a very strict household. Whenever our neighbors, whenever their kids got in trouble, their parents would be like, "Do you want us to send you over to the alleys? Well, you want to go to Uncle Ben?" And their kids, "No, Mom, please, I don't want to go talk to Uncle Ben." So as you can imagine, this day is just a blow-up day of emotions. I remember feeling like my world was ending. I didn't know where my life would go from here. And I was scared. I was scared. And that night, my mom comes down to my room. She grabs my face and she says, "Smith, I will fight for you, but you have to fight for yourself first." And with tears in my eyes, I say, "Okay, Mom, I'll fight. I promise I'll fight." And that day started my path, my right path. Because for so long, I thought that I had gone so far down the wrong path that I could never get back onto the right one. I thought that I had pushed the limits of society, of my family's love for me, of who I could be as a person. But then I found myself determined to prove this quote wrong. That no matter what my past had been, that I could get back onto the right one. That I could become who I wanted to be. And so I joined a recovery program. They're actually out here with their booths. Go check them out. I got a therapist and I started talking about my mental health, and I took what felt like a million steps to recovery. And I finally got to a place where I was happy again. And I hadn't been there for a very, very long time. And I'd walk through school and I'd realize that all of these kids that I saw in the hall, the people that I saw driving on the roads, that they all had their baggage too. I knew the percentage of young men that were struggling with pornography. I knew that people were struggling. And I wanted to share this happiness that I had found with everyone. And so I met this kid named Landon at a summer camp. And the first night I sat down with him and I said, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I just want to tell you my story. And as I told him my story, he started to cry. And he said that 2 weeks before we had met, that he had tried to take his life, that he had been using drugs, drinking, watching pornography, and he felt like no one even noticed, no one even saw that he was hurting. And so, you might remember this, I grab his face, and I say, "Landon, I will fight for you, but you have to fight for yourself first." And with tears in his eyes, he looks at me and he says, "I'll fight, Smith. I promise I'll fight." And so we sit down that night, and for 3 hours, we make a map to his recovery. I take his phone, and I take off the restrictions that his mom had put on there because he had known all the ways around it, and I put on my own. And the funniest thing was getting a text from his mom 3 months later, "Hey, Smith, it's Randy, Landon's mom. Can I get the pin to the restrictions?" And I'm like, "Yes, but by the way, you will forget it because it's not your birthday. So remember this." I saw Landon take those same steps that I had taken. He began to rebuild his relationships, the ones that he had lost. He began to love himself, to love his family, and he was happy. He felt free. And as I watched him do that, I fell in love with the feeling of being a guide for him, a wounded healer. One of my favorite quotes says, now I'm not going to say this exactly right, but it says that a minister's message will not be perceived as authentic unless he speaks from the pain of which he preaches. And so I began this journey of being a wounded healer, and I fall in love with it. So I go to my lacrosse team, and one day at practice, we're doing drills, and I just start talking about this recovery group that I'd gone to. I'm like, yeah, I struggle with pornography, and now I go to this really awesome group. And this kid comes up to me, he says, "I don't know if what you're talking about is real, but if it is, I want to be a part of it." And I'm like, "Yeah, we have a meeting tomorrow after our game, let's go." And so after the lacrosse game, we all hop in a car, we drive down to the group, and I walk in. The facilitator, his name's Chris. He's one of my favorite guys out there. And I walk in, and I smile and wave at Chris like I always do. And following me are 6 guys dressed exactly the same way in our lacrosse uniforms. And so it's like an army. I'm marching cadence, you know. And Chris's mouth, his jaw just dropped. And I smile at him, and I give him 2 thumbs up. And again, I watched these young men do the same thing that I had done, rebuild their relationships, start to love themselves, their family. And some of the sweetest experiences are going to their weddings and watching them find true love again. I'm now the founder of the Live Life Bigger Foundation. I travel the country and speak to schools and youth groups about the harmful effects of social media and pornography. I teach parents how to bridge the gap to technology because, let me tell you this, you are parenting and raising kids in a historical phenomenon, and you aren't doing too hot, right? You are the only generation that will grow up without technology, but will have to raise kids who only know the digital era, and you guys are struggling. I tell the story of my dad, and I'll tell it right now because he's not here. But I had posted this thing on Instagram. It had, the Today Show did like an article on it, and he was asking me how he could look it up. And I'm like, just put in Today Show Smith Alley, and you'll find it. He's like, okay. And he types it in his phone. He hits search, and he's like, Smith, it's not coming up. It's not coming up. And I'm like, hand me your phone. And I look in the search bar, and it says, Today Show Smith Alley, just what I told him. And I look down, and he's in his Messages app. I go, Dad, you have to go to Google. Parents have this huge problem with really understanding the technology, and so being someone who used to get around the restrictions and the routers, I now help parents set up their technology and then also bring in conversations about hard topics. I love what I'm able to do. I love being able to advocate for mental health. But the greatest thing that I've gotten from my recovery is my family back. Because for 5 years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. For 5 years, I didn't think that anyone cared if I woke up. But now I have this family, this team that's unbreakable. Right? That how far can you go down the wrong path before you can't get back onto the right one? It applies here too. There's no reason why my parents should still love me. There's no reason why my sisters should still support me after all the crap that I've put them through. They should be done with me, but they're not. And now that bond is unbreakable. But I'm not the only one, and I hope you know that. I hope that you understand that I am a little bit of everybody's story. And we see that as Instagram's users rise to 1 billion, student depression is on the rise as well. Because we get online and we see these influencers and their lives look like this, and ours just feels like Harry Potter's room under the stairs. Right? I should make a New Year's resolution to just clean my room. We follow these people who travel to Rome and Bora Bora, Greece, Turkey, everywhere that you've ever wanted to go in the world. Like you're just hoping to get there before you die, and they're getting paid to go and stay in a 5-star hotel. How is that fair? Where's the application for that job? And we're stuck at home doing homework, or if you're my mom, you're begging your kids to do homework, laundry, dishes. How can we love our lives when we're comparing it to this false perfection? And pornography is the world's biggest secret. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's in almost every single home across America, and yet it's a topic that nobody wants to talk about. A study showed that 72.8% of participants had seen online pornography before the age of 18. That's almost every single boy and a majority of girls too. So we have this huge problem. Right? We have this issue that people in and out of this room are battling with. What are we going to do? What are we going to do because I wake up with news of a kid who has taken their life because the virtual likes and friends weren't enough to calm real-world blues? I went to a funeral this year on February 18th and another one on March 18th for a 12-year-old boy and a 17-year-old boy. What are we going to do? Because too many times I've seen my friends, my peers, my teammates sink far into the reaches of pornography because they don't feel worthy of the love that they deserve. What will we do because we are starving ourselves and abusing ourselves to build a body that we feel we need to be accepted? And the apps that we so casually carry around on our phones are having serious effects on our society through sex trafficking and child pedophilia, anxiety and depression rates. We are literally killing our generation, and the worst part is that we don't know how to talk about it. Instead, we'd rather talk about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, right? We have a serious crisis going on, and we're turning our backs on them. So my question today is, are you ready to make the change? Are you ready to bring tough conversations into the light, to love, accept, and understand each other? Are you ready to do the hard work that it takes to become the best version of yourself? So today I want to talk about saying goodbye to surviving and saying hello to fighting. Because there came a point in my story, again, I don't have the qualifications to stand on this stage, but I have the life experience, and that's what I want to share with you. There came a point in my life where I had found that I was just surviving. I was just trying to get to the next day. And one day I woke up and it clicked, and I became a fighter. And I woke up every single day, and I loved fighting there. Taking what was destroying me before for so long in my life and punching it in the face. And I started to love that feeling. So first, to the fighter in the room, to the fighter at home watching this, let's talk about you. Let's talk about how you can say goodbye to this survival and start fighting. This is the battle of control. This fight that you are in is all about finding control over yourself, over your emotions, and over who you are. And you have to first find a heart of growth to do this, to win this battle of control, to become the best version of yourself. You first have to fertilize your heart. You have to realize that you are made for more, and that starts here. Over the past year and a half, I've spoken and shared my story with over 400,000 individuals across the country, across the world. And so many times I've had young people come up to me, boys and girls, that are struggling with these same problems, and one of the things that they always say to me is, I just don't like myself. I don't like who I am. I don't like where I'm at. And I always say this to them: if you don't like who you are, become the person that you want to be. Build the person that you want to be. My mom has this sticker on her water bottle that says, there are plenty of good people in the world. If you can't find one, be one. These are 7 different goals that as a fighter you can set every single day to become the best version of yourself. The first goal is a ministering goal. How can you serve others, right? How can you, as a person, wake up every day and instead of acting for yourself, act for others? The second is intellect. How can you become smarter, sharper? How can you be a more intelligent human being? The N is a no goal. How can you quit a behavior that you don't like? How can you change a habit that has destroyed you? D is divine connection. Whatever you believe in, no matter what it is, how can you take that and connect with that? Connect with that connect with that amazing source of good, whatever it is. F is fitness. How can you move your body every single day? There are so many studies that show that that can be an amazing increase, an amazing help to your mental health, to your personal development. The U is understanding emotion. I think the biggest problem today is that youth do not know how to sit there and think. Nobody knows how to understand themselves, right? Whenever we're bored, we pull out our phones or our video games, and we get stimulated. And I think that it's crucial that we learn to understand how we're feeling. And so understanding emotion is all about just sitting there with no distractions, nothing to do except for process your feelings, process your thoughts. And the last one is letters. Write a letter to the person that you want to become. Write a note, leave it somewhere. Leave it on your mirror, leave it on your counter. Figure out who you want to be. Parents, anyone who's supporting, there are a few key things that I want you to take home of how you can better support your family, of how you can better support anyone who is struggling and who is relying on you. Here's the first thing, is to take responsibility in uncharted territory. Now, I don't think anyone in this room has wrapped up a brand new iPhone the night before Christmas and has put it under the tree and thought, I really hope my son or daughter gets a pornography addiction because of this, right? We don't say that. We don't go out and buy a school laptop hoping, I hope they get really distracted on this. I hope they don't do that much school. There's this thing called an apology, and it's okay for parents to use it as well. When technology came out, we didn't understand the impact that it would have on our mental health, our emotional health. It wasn't until about 6 years later when we realized, oh crap, this is doing something to us, right? And so how can I'm not a parent yet, thankfully, but how can, as parents, we go to them and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry because I handed this to you and I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know that this would be your destruction. And now, as a family, we're going to take some steps back. We're going to figure out how we can start fighting this together, how we can become fighters instead of survivors. After this, after you decide that, hey, there's this thing that's tearing my family apart, and I'm going to take it out, you have to replace that bad with good. Now, this can be on a very small scale or a large scale. My mom grew up with a dad who was a physician, and my grandpa worked a lot in Hawaii, where the maintenance men there, they ride motorcycles because they're cheap and get the good gas mileage, and they always wear flip-flops on them. And so many times, he'd seen people that come in and just lose their whole foot. He called motorcycles murder cycles. When all of this came out with my story and what I was going through, I decided that I wanted to start riding motorcycles. And my mom was appalled. She had promised the day that she married my dad that no one in her family would ever get on a motorcycle. But she realized that the physical danger of me being out on a motorcycle was less than the danger, the emotional, mental, and even to a point, physical danger of me being inside her own house. So I got a motorcycle. Now, of course, that's a very large scale, but I think in all ways we can replace the bad with the good. If as a family you want to spend more time connecting, take a look around your house. What do you see? Are there tablets everywhere, TVs in main rooms? Or do you walk around and see board games and Legos scattered all over the floor? And lastly, be willing to compromise. Be willing to say, hey, I understand that's what you want. I don't think we're ready for that. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. A great example, my little sister, she has a social media account. It's on my parents' phone, so she can get on there for 5 or 10 minutes a day, stay up to date on all the people that she's connected with, and it's a beautiful relationship. It's a healthy relationship that she has with social media. Now, the most important thing here is to listen. Listen to the person that you are trying to support. If as a parent, your kid comes to you and says, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I want social media. I want to play this game with my friends. And you're like, oh, I have heard some bad stuff about this. Or you understand the amount of sexual material on social media. First, listen to them. Ask them why. Why do you want this? Why do you want social media? Why do you want to play this game? They might have a very good reason. Like, well, I do these drawings and I want to share with the world. I want to start a business online. They might even say something like, Mom, Dad, I just want to fit in. And that can be a good reason too. So my challenge for you today is to listen to those and be willing to compromise. Be willing to meet them in the middle. Get something on your phone. Support them. Listen to them. Understand them. This no trouble bubble has been one of the greatest things in my life. I know it sounds like it's for toddlers, and yes, I do have the maturity of a toddler, so maybe that's why it works for me, but I challenge you to go home and try this out. A no trouble bubble is a safe space in your house where a conversation can go on without consequences. This will do amazing things for parents and for kids. The first thing as a parent, when your kid comes to you or your spouse comes to you and says, hey, can we go talk in the no trouble bubble? You have about 45 seconds where you get to breathe, right? Get ready for whatever's about to come. The second thing is that you have a script. You know what you're about to say. What you're allowed to say is, I love you, give them an 8-second hug, and ask them what you can do to support them in becoming the best version of themselves. All other things come the next day. How many times as a parent or a spouse do you react to a situation and you're like, the next day, did I really say that? I wish I wouldn't have said that. Or you go to bed and you lay next to your husband or your wife, or you talk to a friend later that evening and you tell them about the situation, about what happened, and they're like, did you really say that to them? Did you really react that way? This gives you the opportunity to sit and think about what the consequences are going to be, what you're going to say, and how you're going to react. As a kid, nothing in my life has been more influential than always having an immediate reaction of love. I can go to my parents, I can tell them anything, and immediately I receive love. Immediately I receive an I love you, an 8-second hug, and to ask how I can be supported. Take, for example, my math grade last semester. I came home and I was like, this is going to be a big bomb, right? This is going to be a big bomb. And I go to my mom and I say, hey, Mom, can we go talk in the no trouble bubble? And she's like, yeah, sure, let's go up. So we go up into their room and I say, I got a 58% on my math test. How do you feel about that? And I see her go, and she goes, I love you. She gives me a hug and she says, how can I support you in becoming the best version of yourself? And I was like, I'm so glad I set this thing up. This thing is awesome. But that immediate reaction of love truly can change the situation. It can change the way that your kids or whoever you're trying to support turns their success, their struggles into their success, their mess into their message. These things I know will change your life. They have changed mine. They will change the way that your family interacts. They will change the way that you support each other. Lastly, I want you to know that you are enough. There's nothing that you can do to change this. There's nothing that you can do to deny your worth as a human being. And you get to choose. You get to choose the next step you take in life. You get to choose if you find help. You get to choose if you seek love. You get to choose your life's path. Because there is no distance that you can go down the wrong path before you can get back onto the right one. Your next life is always just one step away. I want to thank you for coming. It means so much. I love this conference. This is my third year, I think. Not third year, but third conference. Thank you so much for coming. And I know that the booths will all be amazing. All of the speakers will be amazing. And so I hope that you have a great day. If you want to reach out to me, there's my contact. Don't leave today feeling hopeless. Don't leave today feeling afraid. I love Unashamed, Unafraid out there. An amazing group. Don't leave feeling scared. Leave feeling hopeful. Leave feeling courageous. Leave today being a fighter. Dream big dreams and live life bigger. Thank you.